And then we're going to open up to a wider Q&A discussion. So everyone who's not speaking to this point will be on mute, and obviously if time allows, we're going to use the raise hand function to ask further questions that way. And so just keep your questions and comments in the chat brief, so we can in the chat quite brief, and we can get through as many of them as possible. We're going to try to wrap up just before 9 o'clock, hopefully by 8:45, and then post a copy of the recording to our website. So I think with that, then we are going to move to Lisa, who is going to be going through a presentation. And Lisa, you've got that ability. There we go. Perfect.
Go. You can see and you can hear, right? Hands.
We are good.
Thumbs up. Perfect. Well, good evening, and thank you for that, Councillor Menard. We're happy to be here today to present the proposal for the reuse and addition of the property at 15 Oblats Avenue. So as indicated, I'm Lisa De La Rosa with FO10 Planning and Design, and joining me here today is my colleague Patricia Warren. We're consulting planners on the file, and we'll be working with our clients, Forum and Smart Living Properties, on the required development application approvals for this. So as the councillor indicated, prior to tonight, we've had meetings already on this project. We had formal pre-consultation meeting with the cities. We've met with the councillor and members of the community association. As I'll go into later, those discussions have been very beneficial in shaping where we are at today. So we look forward to that continued collaboration and welcome the opportunity for the conversation with you here tonight. Also joining me is Dana Gilbert from Forum, who I'm going to actually pass it over to now so she can provide some insight into who Forum and SLP are and the type of rental accommodations they're introducing here.
Hi, everyone. For those of you who haven't met me before, I'm Dana Gilbert. I'm the Vice President of Development here. I have received comments as well, so please know, here's a face to a name. To introduce Forum, Forum is a Toronto-based investor, developer, asset manager who's operating across all of North America. We have a 25-year history with a focus on real estate, private equity, and infrastructure, while partnering with various municipalities and institutions in a significant part of our company.
Dana, we can't hear you anymore.
Really?
I can hear you.
I can hear you.
Okay. Sorry, guys.
You're back.
Okay, good. I'm not sure what you missed, but maybe I'll go back. Basically, Forum has a 25-year history, and we have a focus on real estate, private equity, and infrastructure. We've partnered with many municipalities and institutions, and it's a significant part of who we are as a company. We're committed to sustainable social and corporate responsibility by identifying risks and opportunities, such as the retrofit of an existing building like we are here, which utilizes existing infrastructure, focusing on reducing carbon, implementing systems like geothermal, heating and cooling, with a focus on social diversity and community building through exceptional design. We recently launched a REIT, which is focused on residential housing sector that focused specifically on impact. And our real estate development is made up of a number of individuals, and it's led by a group, including myself, who have been involved in billions of dollars of real estate across Canada that have won awards in architecture and design. And I'll pass it over to Ryan Denner from SLP to introduce SLP.
Thanks, Dana. I'm Ryan Denyer. I'm the Director of Product and Brand at Smart Living Properties. We're an Ottawa-based real estate development company. We've been operating for 10 years and have completed 80+ developments within the city, primarily in the downtown area. We specialize in building fully furnished, all-inclusive rental accommodations. And within our development approach, we essentially have two layers. The first three key qualities is location, which we're building in 15-minute neighborhoods. So we want to be able to walk, bike, or bus to work, education, or entertainment. The next is quality and design. We're looking to build very modern quality accommodations. We spend a lot of time thinking through the designs of the property, the quality of living of the residents within the property. And the third is convenience. We package in furnished all-inclusive rental packages. The startup cost to live in a smart living property is very low compared to a traditional market. And we provide a ton of convenience through our online platform, how we deliver service to our residents, how we communicate within the community, and that we're essentially a turnkey rental solution where there's no moving trucks at our property. Now, the next is two key design concepts that we implement. One is smaller living, and the second is living together. Our goal is to produce more quality accommodations that are attainably priced and accessible to more people. And so we do that through essentially these 5 core values. Next slide, Lisa. Dana.
So Forum and SLP, giving our alignment and a lot of our focus in terms of housing and the way that we approach every single site, is that we are focused on adaptive reuse projects, very much so like the Oblats project that is coming before you today. And we're aiming to improve those housing options for young professionals and demographics that require attainable forms of housing. These communities are efficiently designed, highly amenitized, and they create a sense of community while being convenient and all-inclusive, as Ryan just spoke to. So it provides a place to live that's close to work or school with easy access to transit. It's a transitionary form of housing that is attainable in its cost. It's all-inclusive with various technologies throughout and a simple monthly billing that makes it easy and convenient for month-to-month living. And it is accepting of like-minded and creating a like-minded community with opportunities for increased social interaction and day-to-day work adaptability through the highly amenitized spaces in the building that forms a community within whatever that design is, that then extends out to the broader community as well. So back to you, Lisa.
Yeah, so I think that was a really good introduction of what you guys are doing here. It's something that's unique. It's proven. There are examples of it happening. And I think it's going to be an exciting sort of take for this part of the city. So before we really get into the proposal itself, I think it's important to understand the site and how we got here. There is a history to this property, and understanding that did influence the design. So the original site was larger and fronted onto Main Street. The building was built in 1915 with additions in 1926 and 1954. A severance was granted in 2008, which separated the site into the parcels to facilitate the development on the western portion. So that's the Corners on Main project. That's also where the current zoning was sort of enacted based on the secondary plan, which we'll get into. So the remaining property, including the convent building, was sold to Forum SLP last year in April. So the property's heritage values have been considered by the Built Heritage Committee. The final recommendation was not to designate the building, however, did require that any redevelopment recognize the Sisters of the Sacred Heart of Jesus and their important role that they played in the community for over 100 years. So their work focused on education, healthcare, and social services. So any redevelopment was also to retain the statue of the Blessed Virgin, which has been a fixture on this site for decades. It's moved around a bit, but it's still there. So I don't have to explain too much about this slide. We are all familiar with this site and its location within a 15-minute community, thus making it an ideal place for a development with this residential housing approach. And then prior to, going into the different development options and potential of the site, it's important to understand the planning framework and understand the city's vision for these lands. So the site is designated general urban in the current official plan, and that designation permits a range and type of densities in housing, as well as a mix of other uses. It generally supports heights up to 4 stories. And this proposal is consistent with that designation, which is a designation that's being carried through into the new official plan. It's got a different title, but the characteristics of the designation are similar. So in the new official plan, it's in the inner urban transect, designated transforming neighborhood. This site is also subject to the Old Ottawa East Secondary Plan, which designates these land as residential low-rise for the part of the property fronting onto Springhurst, and then residential medium-rise fronting on Oblats. These designation permits heights up to 4 stories on Springhurst and 6 stories on Oblats, and that secondary plan is being carried over in the new official plan. From a zoning perspective, there's 2 zones, the R4UD for the 4-story Springhurst side, and then the R5B, which reflects that different secondary plan designation for the Oblat side of the medium rise residential. So the zoning is summarized on that screen. It's quite small and I apologize, but we can go into the details of it later if need be. The image on the right was an exploration on the mass of the building footprint that is permitted as of right in the zoning. We understand that it doesn't represent an accurate build out just because there's no, the landscape requirements aren't accounted for, nor is the amenity space outdoor amenity, but it does give an understanding of what's possible with regards to setbacks and massing if there was a full redevelopment of the site. So once we understood that, we were able to go into the different ideas for the site. So I'm going to quickly go through the evolving options that we considered and discussed and presented to the city. So option 1 was considered the additional height facing Oblats, which could go up to 6 stories as per the secondary plan, and then wrapping around to a 4-story building along Springhurst. This saw the removal of the 1954 addition to the existing building. Option 2 below that retained the entirety of the existing Oblats building, added 2 recessed floors to the top to maximize that 6 stories that is permitted, and then added 2 additional rings and kept the existing 1954 addition in the middle. From there, we ended up refining that slightly, and in May had a pre-consultation, and that's that bigger picture with the color on the screen, that had a redevelopment that was 4 stories, contained approximately 339 units, and that was in a conversion of the existing building with 2 additional wings. So after that pre-consultation, the team took some time, considered the staff comments and the community comments we heard from the community representatives that were there at that pre-consultation. And what's on the screen now is the revised plan that we presented back in March of 2020, it seems so long ago, but in March of 2020 of this year. And that's the one that was shared with the councillor and the Community Association Planning Committee. So the comments from the pre-consult highlighted a few changes that were needed, and that resulted in the scaled down building footprint that retained the mature trees in the northeast corner of the property by introducing a new public park that would be dedicated to the city. The proposal retained the entire existing building, converting the internal areas to apartments and keeping only the western addition, resulting in approximately 284 units of mixed sizes. Parking was limited to surface parking and set aside for visitors and short-term parking only. Bicycle parking is indoors and at the ratio of over 1 space per unit. The co-living housing model requires ample amounts of amenity spaces that have been accommodated indoors on all floors, along with rooftop offering, an interior outdoor courtyard, as well as an interior outdoor amenity space on top of the Oblats building. And it was a 4-story profile, save and except that enclosed amenity space on the roof. So since presenting that last plan, we, as Dana indicated and Councillor has indicated as well, there's been some comments coming in, and we wanted to highlight some of those to indicate that we are listening, and there are some changes coming from those comments that we've received. These plus all the comments we hear tonight and throughout the planning process will help us process and shape this project. So what has changed is what we're presenting here today is mainly a change to the rooftop amenity area. The enclosed space is now atop the new addition where it can be constructed as part of the new building and doesn't distract from the heritage facade along Oblats. It also screens the outdoor rooftop amenity area, which has moved to be parallel with Springhurst and pushed internally. The space surrounding all this amenity area, so close to the edge of the building, is landscaped and unaccessible. So it's just landscaped area. There's no programming to be happening in the sort of skirt around the amenity space. The remainder of the project stays the same as was presented in March. It's 284 units, 20 surface parking spaces, and the new public park. So as previously mentioned, the parking will be limited to surface only and set aside for visitors and short term. Tenants will be aware that no parking is provided, and relying on street parking is risky as there's no guarantees that an on-street spot will be available at all times. Residents will be instead encouraged to use alternative modes of transportation. Their daily needs are within walking distance, so there is ample opportunities to get what is needed without using a private car. With ample enclosed bike parking and proximity to multi-use pathways, cycling will be convenient. Residents will also receive a preloaded Presto car as part of their move-in package. There is plans to have car share spaces, 1 or 2 in the surface lot. There'll be an option for those in the community who need private vehicle for occasional trips. Also part of the planning process, we're exploring the possibility of formalizing the on-street parking along Oblats to provide additional parking options for visitors to the area. The city will likely be conducting a parking study as part of the planning approval process, which will provide helpful information and insight regarding the availability of parking in the area. So this is the site plan. I know it's hard to see with all the scale of it and the different colors, but I'm going to help walk you through it here. So on the site plan, you can better see the park, which is in the top right-hand corner that's outlined by that dark green. So that's where we will allow for the retention of the 2 mature trees in that corner. And it's also envisioned to be the space to commemorate the Sisters of the Sacred Heart of Jesus and relocate that statue. The red outline represents the footprint of the enclosed rooftop amenity space. It's important to note that there's no windows on the west side. It's just a wall. Another thing to note is the pathway connection along the western edge that will provide that through block connection from Springhurst to Oblats. This has been designed as a walkway due to the narrow passing space between the property line and the existing Oblats building. Bicyclists will be encouraged through different calming mechanisms to walk their bike, to dismount and walk their bikes to use this connection. So speaking of the setbacks along that side, the new addition was designed to work towards a compliant setback. The required setback in the R4UD zone, which is where the addition is proposed, is currently required at 1.5 meters. This proposal has that addition at 3.4 meters to the main building wall. So while Forum and SLP specialize in efficiently designed smaller units for individuals, this building will include 44 suites with 2 or more units, 11 of which will be designed as barrier-free. So I'm not really going to go into the elevation, just point out a couple of things. So of note on the Oblats facade, which is that bottom image, you'll see the retention of the window shape. The windows do need to be replaced, and a decision has been made to replace them with a similar look window that meets today's building code and standards for efficiency, heat retention, and such. The east and west elevations are up on the screen now. You can't see, but the east elevation on the top will have, this is where you will see those mature trees, sort of where that red car is. You'll have the trees on that end of the building, and that's looking from the park. And just to close off the building, just wanted to highlight that the units will be efficiently designed as Ryan indicated, with quality finishes. The quality will extend to what the ample shared amenity spaces will be, which are really the core of the co-living approach. So there's a listing there of what's being considered as the amenities that are going to be shared by the residents of this building. So the applications that will be required for this project will be a rezoning and site plan approval. Currently, the subject site is subject to a holding zone and has split zoning. So the portion of the site facing Oblat is zoned R5B, permitting development up to 18 meters in height, and the remainder of the site is governed by the requirements of the R4UD zone. So this rezoning will request one zone for the entirety of the property and include provisions unique to the approved site plan. So that is things such as reducing the parking requirements, permissions for the enclosed rooftop amenity space, as well as recognizing the non-conforming setbacks of the existing building. Applications are expected to be submitted within the next few weeks. So before I pass it off to Dana, just sort of to go over where we are in the process in a bit more detail, I'm going to just highlight that this project, when it's complete, will be a great example of the history of how to retain an existing building, but also commemorate the Sisters of the Sacred Heart of Jesus with the new public park. The residents will have attainable housing in a place that is well situated and designed to accommodate all of their needs. So that concludes what I have to say. And with the time remaining, we're going to answer some questions, but we're going to pass it first off to Dana just to give us a bit of a recap of where we're at and what's next.
Thank you, Lisa. Thanks everybody for attending tonight, and we're excited to hear all of your comments. As I said earlier, I have received a number of emails from you all. Please know that I have received each and every one. They have been passed off to the counselor's office and also have been captured as record. This is a little bit unique in the sense that we do not have an application as of yet, but we wanted to come back out to the community and get some more comments from you all. Unfortunately, some of our drawings and application supporting documentation that we needed was a little bit lagged because some of those documents were locates that we needed. And as we all know, the storm has delayed quite a bit of things, but we also want to make sure that our application is fulsome, it's complete in nature. And so we're taking our time to make sure that not only your concerns and questions are answered and included, but that our application is deemed complete and is fulsome in order to have a more holistic and quality detailed review by everyone once we submit. As Lisa alluded to, it will be in the next few weeks. We were just waiting on a few more pieces of information. However, we wanted to still come to you all with this set date that we had articulated and be committed to this date, and also ensure that we weren't pushing this into the summer days as well, and get in front of you before we submit an application. So that's our timing on the application itself.
Okay, thank you so much for that. That's very, very helpful, Dana and Lisa. So I think now we're going to be going to the Old Ottawa East Community Association for a brief presentation. So John, I believe that's you, John Dance, or John and Phyllis. I'm not sure if Phyllis is also presenting, but John, certainly over to you, I believe, at this point, right?
Okay, thanks, Councillor. I wonder if Bob's on the call yet. He was running a barbecue at Lady Evelyn, and he was possibly going to speak. He's a little busy. Is Bob there anywhere?
I'm not seeing Bob.
Bob being the president of the community association. So
yeah, I'm not seeing Robert,
okay.
Bob's name there. So
all right, well, I'll go ahead if I may then. Councillor, thanks very much. First off, I appreciate that major changes have already been made as a result of community discussions. And I think maybe tonight's discussions will result in further improvements too. We don't yet know what city staff's positions are on the current proposal, and that will help inform our position. And as was mentioned earlier, it's important that if you have concerns, you have ideas, that you write to the city once the application has been submitted. And we really would appreciate if you share any concerns, ideas you have with the community association, and you'll see on the website where you can contact us. We've heard from a number of residents of Corners, and they've had highly articulate points of view in terms of their concerns. But we haven't heard from anybody, really from anybody beyond Corners and Main, and would appreciate hearing from people who live nearby and beyond. Finally, I'd like to thank Councillor Menard and Ariella for getting this together with Forum and Smart Living Property. It's good to have this discussion, even though the formal submission has been made. It's really good to have you come forward at this point. I think in terms of how we look at it in the planning committee, and I'm the chair of the planning committee, I have to confess. You know, compared to what could have happened here, it's much better. I mean, you saw what the massing could be with full 4 stories on Springhurst and full 6 stories, and no retention of the sisters building. So I think, you know, in the big context, this is a marked improvement over what could have been. I think similarly in terms of what's being proposed at the moment versus what they started out with, again, there have been significant improvements. The retention of the existing building is a real benefit to the community, I think, and to the overall appearance of the institutional land development. And one of the most contentious issues, of course, is the parking. And you know, this, on the one hand, it probably means there are going to be new residents wanting to park their cars on adjacent and constrained streets. On the other hand, the lack of parking may deter prospective residents who have cars and realize that this is not a good place to live. So, you know, there's some real balance, and fewer cars would mean less traffic on the streets. The small units, I mean, again, here's the opportunity that will be affordable units. It will mean more people, but on the other hand, the smaller units means some affordability. It means greater diversity in our community. It won't be the same demographic that we have in Corners and the rest of the institutional lands. And this is not a bad thing. You know, to have a younger, maybe more transient demographic is probably good for Old Ottawa East. One particular issue that's come up is the proposed public pathway between the eastern face of Corners and Main and the sisters' property, what we're talking about right now. And it's the issue here is that it's many Corners residents, people who moved in, were not aware that the community association had long pushed for a connection between Springhurst and Des Oblats to have, well, indeed, it used to be there historically. And so we've wanted that. Unfortunately, it seems that.
Sorry, John, I just,
Yes?
it's Phyllis. I just want you said eastern edge, you mean western edge.
Well, it's the eastern edge of Corners and the western edge of the sisters' property, right? Anyway, so this is something the community's wanted for a long time, but unfortunately the domicile didn't get around to telling anybody that this is a condition that the community had been seeking. We have it within the community design plan. It's something that we pushed on to have domicile do before, but they said, oh no, it happened when the sisters' property is done. Well, here we are. So anyway, that's a bit of a contentious issue, but the community association has sought to have that linkage, to have the permeability of the new developments, and the community center will be more accessible with a public pathway. That said, hopefully the pathway can be built so that there's some fencing, there's some visual barrier with the residents in Corners at the ground level anyway, and so that at night it's a safe area. The issue of the proximity of Corners and Main to the new development. I'm encouraged to hear tonight that the setback of the addition is more than what's required to have. Hopefully, that if that does go forward, it can be done so that it minimizes the impact on the residents. To hear that there'll be no windows on the amenity space on the western side, that too, I think, would benefit Corners residents. The overall impact, I mean, the Community Association's Planning Committee is concerned about the overall impact of the number of units that are being developed throughout the community, in Greystone Village and in this site. You know, we're well over the 1,000 dwelling unit target that was set in the secondary plan. And we wonder at what point Main Street and Springhurst and the other streets are going to not be able to cope. So, large question. You know, I think it's come, and I really appreciate this opportunity for being able to speak to it. So I'm looking forward to hearing what other people beyond those in Corners also have to say on this. Thanks, Councillor Menard. Okay,
Thank you very much, John, and appreciate all your service on the Community Association Planning Committee side. Phyllis, I know you had jumped in there just briefly. Anything else you just quickly wanted to add, or you okay?
No, I'm fine, thanks.
Okay, very good. So I definitely wanted to go to TCOM residents who have been active on this file and expressing lots of views, which is helpful. So just with that, I believe, and they can correct me, but I believe we're going to be going on 3 different topics, so just a few minutes each. And the first one is on parking/density, and that one would be presented by Donna Walsh. Donna, are you available to do that one? Oh, I think I see you there, Terry and Donna. And do I have to unmute you here, or can we unmute you? Can you unmute yourself?
We're here.
Oh, there you go. Okay, you're up.
Great, thank you. I'm going to talk about specific requirements of the zoning bylaw, a term derived from Old Norse, meaning law for a place where people dwell, and which broadly speaking exists to regulate development in the best interests of the community as a whole. The zoning bylaw recognizes through a variety of measures and metrics that those who already dwell in a community have rights that should be protected. The zoning bylaw is organized in a system of zones, and as we've heard, the provisions relevant to this discussion are the R4 zone on the Springhurst side of the site and the R5 zone on the Oblats side. Let's look at the purpose statement of the R4 zone. The intention is that a wide mix of residential building forms be permitted, ranging from detached to low-rise apartment dwellings no more than 4 stories in height, and that development be regulated through interpretation of the bylaw provision, quote, in a manner that is compatible with existing land use patterns, so that the residential character of a neighborhood is maintained or enhanced. The same compatibility objective is set for the R5 zone, which, as we've heard, allows mid-rise apartment dwellings above 4 stories. All of the various bylaw requirements around height, setbacks, landscaping, etc., serve as proxy measures for compatibility. And the parking requirements, set out in great detail in the bylaw, act as an important proxy measure for the desired density of a particular residential zone. For this reason, the parking requirements for this site should not simply be ignored. They are a clear constraint on the design of any redevelopment proposal for this site, and the developer has a responsibility to balance the number of units to be built with parking space requirements. This site should only be developed to the extent that it can meet the upper limit of the parking requirements, regardless of what the vision is for serving a particular rental market segment at this point in time. Under sections 101 and 102 of the bylaw, the required number of off-street parking spaces for a development of 284 units on this site appears to be 163 spaces. A proposal for 284 units with 20 surface parking spaces seems to me to be a blatant attempt to overdevelop the site in a completely inappropriate manner at the expense of neighboring property owners and residents. It is simply too dense. This deficit is not overcome by a proposal for 291 bicycle parking spaces, which are an additional requirement under the bylaw and are not meant to be substituted for car parking spaces. I would hope that a development proponent whose website says that it prides itself on creating value that benefits the communities in which we invest will respect the rights of neighboring property owners and come forth with a plan for development of this site that conforms to the requirements of the zoning bylaw. That would go a long way to sorting out many of the other issues that people will speak to tonight, and which have at their root an attempt to massively over-densify the site. My 2 cents worth.
Okay. Oh, Donna, do you have any more last comments before finishing up there?
I guess just simply that, you know, there's a certain present notion of how things would benefit here, but this development will be here in 50 years time, and it's that long range. I mean, I think that a lot of what is being said and sort of flown as benefits may not stand the test of time, and it will be the community that exists here that will suffer in that case.
Okay. Thank you very much, Donna. That was succinct, and appreciate the feedback. I think we're going to be going to on the design of the addition and the green space, Marlene Lundy. So Marlene, are you available?
I'm here. I'm here.
Okay, fantastic.
Oops, my
You're up
camera
for a
maybe
few.
is not functioning quite well, but here we go. I think it'll click in a second. I guess I just, yeah, thanks for the presentation tonight, because that actually a few of the items that I was working on here. But I guess that I'd have to say that I was really excited about this project to begin with, and I was probably like being the "don't worry, be happy" girl around the neighborhood. I'd seen a lot of the properties that you have elsewhere, and I was really excited this project would give us this like really unique chance to repurpose this structure and perhaps, you know, blend the old with the new kind of thing. And I've seen other developments like that around the city, and I love it. Really, it really intrigues me, and I was kind of really happy to be perhaps next to something like this. But like that was really short-lived when I saw the actual design proposal, and kind of, I mean, having you go through this history tonight was really helpful, because it actually makes me go like, what the hell? Like, why did you give up this when you came to this a few times? But I'll get to that in a second. Because when I saw the design that was shared with us, I was like, what is going on here? Like it totally didn't make sense to me or to many of the neighbors that I've spoken with. So I guess on that sense, it's really fascinating to see the evolution of the project. And I guess it makes me somewhat concerned about the community input that maybe you've received, because it doesn't quite reflect, I'd say, the concerns of the most immediate neighbors to this project, those being on Springhurst, and of course, those in TCOM where I live. In fact, like there's this continuous offloading as you show the evolution of the project, more and more over to the northwest side, to the domicile side, or to the TCOM side, which I think is kind of fascinating. The L-shaped addition in northwest corner, for the vast majority of us, is like an extremely unwelcome block-like structure, like almost monolithic, you know. It doesn't really appear to fit with the building itself. You look at the building and it's like very dense on one side and not so on the other. It doesn't really seem to us, as we've all discussed it, kind of like transition to the neighbors, either at Springhurst or, you know, for TCOM 1. It totally wipes out the relocation of the existing parkette. And I'd like to mention that the secondary plan for Old Ottawa East is not just about the maintenance of the parkette, of the statue itself. It's about the associated grove of trees. And that particular parkette was very carefully planned with the previous owners, as my next neighbor will speak to. I actually find it really interesting that you had the option to go up 2 floors on the Oblats side, and seem to have completely dismissed that, when I thought the design of it was really intriguing and interesting. And the result of it is this offloading, again, as I've said, of density to the northeastern side of the property, which I think is really probably where so much of this disagreement and contention is coming from, because the rest of us are very happy with the idea that you're keeping this and repurposing it. It's really that offloading of all this density to the corner, of course, closest to us, but to our neighbors on Springhurst. That's obviously the most upsetting, when there's so many other options. There's the option to go up, there's the option to go out from the center block. There's a lot of different approaches, and I'm still listening to your presentation and not really clear on why you put all that density at the end. I saw the evolution of the design, but I didn't understand the reasonings behind it. So I'd be looking forward to hearing you talk a bit more about that as we move on.
Thank you so much, Marlene. Appreciate that. Again, succinct and helpful to stay on time. I appreciate both of. So I think at the end of this is one more presenter for TCOM. It would be helpful to hear from the development side. And then Bob, I also wanted to just give you a chance to jump in. I know you've been fielding a lot of calls from neighbors and emails from folks. So if you want to, I know John Dance did earlier, but if you wanted to as well. So the last speaker on the TCOM side is Adriana Beeman, and it's on the core mission statement in relation and good corporate citizenship in relation to the meaning of the Mary Garden. And so, Adriana, are you there? You're just on mute.
There I am. Am I
there
unmuted?
Perfect. You're good now.
Thank you very much, Sean. Thank you very much for giving me and my neighbors an opportunity to speak. And I'd like to address my concerns with the proposed plans in relation to the corporate language I read on the forum website, which you speak about delivering extraordinary outcomes to your stakeholders and the community being included as a stakeholder, that you are adaptable and agile, that your impact on communities and the environment are at the core of who you are. And you're not just striving for financial returns, that there is an equal, if not greater, emphasis on impacting communities. Your projects do no harm to people or communities or have any negative environmental consequences. In this regard, as we've all mentioned, with respect to maintaining the convent building, to its readaptive use of affordable housing, and to its conversion for energy efficiency, we are very grateful and appreciative. And thank you for maintaining your core value and objectives. But as you've heard, the proposed 4-story addition, in our opinion, that many of us believe, that addition contradicts your core values and key statements, because many of us believe it will cause harm to people's mental well-being, potential financial harm. We believe, some of us, that it will harm the community of Old Ottawa East by increasing the density, as Donna spoke about, without the required parking. As John said, with an infrastructure that we don't think is sustainable, capable of sustaining this increased density at this time. A negative environmental impact by the removal of green space, increase in noise population. You describe in your real estate portfolio, as you've spoken about, that 15 Oblats Avenue is a convent built in 1915 and originally the home of the Sisters of the Sacred Hearts of Jesus. Well, part of the Sisters' home, as we know, is the Mary Parquet. A few weeks ago, I had the pleasure of speaking with Sister Andre Gandon, the representative for the Sisters, and her view on the importance of the Mary Garden. She was very happy to hear of the readaptive use of the original convent building. The Sisters had an understanding with the previous developer that whatever development occurred on that site, there was no misunderstanding that the Mary Parquet was to remain at its present location. Hence, as we talked about, there was very special care taken to design and transplant and plant the trees. As we've talked about, it was moved once, but this was the sisters' wish. It's not just something like a rock to be relocated. A relocation of the Mary statue cannot recreate this historical and spiritual significance of the Mary statue and its surrounding green space. Although there's no legal protection for the sisters' wishes, I urge you as a good corporate citizen, you have this opportunity now to honor that commitment. In conclusion, we sincerely hope that you will take into consideration all of our concerns. And as you said, you've received numerous emails of all our neighbors. Many of us hope you can commit to being adaptable and agile. As Marlene spoke about, you had different options, and we were very surprised that you landed on this. We want you to hear our voice. We want you to deliver outside the box, as your website promises, and modify your proposal. That you don't just look at financial returns, that you continue, as we are so thankful, to collaborate with our community as a key stakeholder for an extraordinary outcome, to use your words, for your company to achieve your core values. And we will continue to be steadfast in our commitment to ensuring that the development of 15 Oblats reflects what many of us believe to be in the best interests of the community as a whole. Thank you.
Okay, Adriana, thank you so much for that. And again, very succinct. Appreciate all three presentations from TCOM. You've outlined a number of issues, and I think we're going to go to just Bob Gordon first, just to mention, and then we'll go back to the development team to respond to some of what they've heard. Bob, did you want to make any comments further than what John Dance has made? Are you okay?
No, I'm sorry I jumped on late. I had to deal with the school barbecue. And today was the rain date, so it was a makeup. So I'm sorry for being late, but I did catch the end of John's presentation, and John pretty much covered everything that we had discussed within the planning committee. I have been personally contacted by other residents within the community, just inquiring about the building and not taking any position either way with respect to some of the designs or anything along those areas, just with questions about, you know, what its end purpose was and what they were going to do. I did want to clarify something real quick that Marlene touched on with respect to the secondary plan and the protection of the trees. That secondary plan was in reference to the original grove of trees where the TCOM 1 and 2 stand now. There was those grove of trees where the Mary statuette originally was positioned. That's what the secondary plan was referencing, not where it is now. Because the trees that are there now, those are those Norway maples, and the ones that were in the grove were sugar maples, and had a much longer lifespan. So just wanted to clarify on that one, Marlene. It's not really, you know, it can be a little bit confusing. So I just wanted to make sure that that point was kind of clear. The only other item I was going to touch on was with respect to parking. There hasn't been, other than the what Terry and Donna had brought up, I hadn't heard anything in particular from residents about concern about the parking overall, but I can definitely see the validity in it. But at the same time, I'm wondering whether us using that dependency on considering the environmental situation as it is, that we focus on providing more spaces for single vehicle spots and not forcing more of a mass transit situation or alternative method, active transportation method. So I think that in some of the views that we've been discussing within the core tenet of the community association within SLO is trying to foster that active transportation method and something that we can kind of move towards to instilling that core item stays within the community, that we're trying to get more active transportation within the community and not trying to rely on single vehicular use.
Okay, thank you very much, Bob, for those comments. And again, thank you so much for, I know you fielded a lot of questions from folks. We've been the same in our office, but you're a volunteer, and appreciate the work that you do. I will just, on the parking piece as well, I'll just also say, we've seen a lot in the last, almost 4 years now, 3.5 years. And it's really, it's a balance, because sometimes people want a heck of a lot more parking, but you can end up with more congestion that way too. I've seen buildings go up many stories and a lot of parking added, and there's a lot of in and outs. And so it's not always positive when you have so much more parking. Now, I think the concern legitimately from Donna is that, well, you want to make sure people aren't just parking all over the place in the street and taking up all the spaces that exist there and creating that kind of free for all either. And I totally agree with that. And I think there's a couple things at play here. Number one is those street rules. We may have to take a look at what those street rules are, right? How many hours you can park there for, what kind of permitting system. And I know John in our office and Ariella and Mel have looked into this, the kind of permitting system that exists around there, and balance that with we don't want to be adding a bunch more congestion to the community with 200 parking spaces, let's say, with the in and outs that'll be going on, which is also a concern, right? So very much appreciate Donna's comments and Bob's comments. This is a balance. And I think there's a number of tools we're going to have to work with to see through kind of the goal of active transportation while not having that congestion in the community that I know Donna has been concerned about and other residents are concerned with. So appreciate those comments. Dana, did you want to go through and there was 3 presentations there from TCOM and you heard Bob's comments. Did you want to respond, or Lisa, one of the two of you want to respond to some of what you're hearing?
Yeah, I mean, I think myself as well as Ryan would love to comment. Thank you, Councillor, and everyone for making your presentations. It's always great to hear from everyone, and love the opportunity to be able to, be transparent around the thinking and how we got to where we are and how the decisions have been made. Because we were just finishing up on the parking side of it, I might just finish one point and then pass it over to Ryan. Ryan and SLP, sorry, the lights just went off and then just went back on. So, okay. Anyway, so Ryan, our partners from SLP, have a number of different projects throughout Ottawa that are very, very similar to what we have right now and can talk specifically on the parking. But before I pass it over, I just want to note that one of the major variables for the development space was that we wanted to preserve the existing building. And that's how we wanted to honor the convent. That's how we wanted to honor the community and preserve that heritage building and that piece of that legacy. In doing so, I'm sure you can appreciate that digging an underground parking garage underneath an existing structure is just not possible. But also the way that we've proposed the amount of units and the type of units, the attainable form of units, is a certain product type that doesn't lend itself to individuals renting these spaces that own vehicles, and or, as you heard from Lisa's presentation, that they will know that they don't have access to a parking spot when they are renting that unit. But I'll pass it over to Ryan to give a little bit more commentary on the success they've had on a number of different sites through Ottawa and what we're seeing, who's renting, and how many parking spaces that we're actually seeing being taken up and occupied.
Thanks, Dana. We definitely have quite a bit of experience in the downtown core of this type of scenario. We've been developing properties for 10 years, and we have used this concept essentially for that whole period of time. So we have quite an extensive period of, let's say, experience in the area. What we're doing with the type of units and our approach is we're essentially creating a modern form of living that's serving diverse background of people. I know I was mentioned the affordable housing. So we're not considered to be affordable, but we consider ourselves attainable. So quality housing that's more attainably priced. Now, our experience and our approach here is we're intentionally designing this property, and we have intentional management strategies to promote the use of active and public transportation. Part of our approach with the adaptive reuse, which is a common theme throughout properties that we develop, is we feel that it's a sustainable way to grow our city by repurposing and revitalizing properties as they sit today. They preserve the heritage, but also bring new life and continue that story in a new way and honor the past. And so parking specific, we're finding that consumer behavior has changed significantly over the past 6 years. And we're seeing other areas of the world that are further ahead than we are here in Ottawa. And what we're seeing the changes is people are prioritizing quality accommodations, quality of living, quality of experiences, quality of food that they're eating in their relationships, saving for the future, and then paying for gas, cars, and insurance kind of at the bottom of their list. So we're finding that properties that we once had many parking spots for, they're very underused, to be very transparent. We end up renting them to external people so that those are viable parking spots to maintain. But the consumer behavior is definitely changing. We're purposely promoting the use of active and public transportation. Consumer base are prioritizing different needs, especially those that are new to their careers. They're looking to live and walk to work or bike to work or public transportation. You know, they're really looking for quality accommodations, how they live, how they experience things, saving for the future, because purchasing homes is becoming more and more difficult for those that are new to their careers. Definitely more so, all prioritized ahead of budgeting for vehicles. So those two combined are essentially our rationale for parking. We look to other places in the world to see, you know, where we think the future is headed. And I think that probably many in the room can agree. I'll use a couple examples. Is Copenhagen is actually the leader in the world, with 40% of commutes being done via bicycle, and 60% of people that live in the city are using bicycles every day. Now, one of the world's capitals, London, England, has actually just partnered with the group that developed that plan in Copenhagen to implement that in their core city within London over the next 10 years. So to be honest, I think that this is where everything is headed. I think that we're behind the game and that the leaders in the world are kind of proving the statistics that's more sustainable. So that's essentially our rationale and our attention behind the parking.
Mm-hmm. And if I can just add to that, thank you so much, Ryan. But it's another reason why we're oversupplying the number of bicycle spots as well. That will be internal to the building, which is 1 per unit, actually more than 1 per unit. The other thing I wanted to note about that surface parking lot on the back is that also is where the loading of the building will be. That loading is more intended for vehicles like FedEx or Purolator, et cetera, to take those off of the streets as well. There will not be extensive move in, move out, because as we discussed before, this is an all-inclusive, fully furnished, all utilities included. And so people are coming with their personal effects, but it is a form of housing that is more attainable and is more convenient in its nature. The one other thing I wanted to touch on, because I just jotted some notes and then I see that there's some few hands up, but I just wanted to get to everybody's points that I jotted down throughout those 3 presentations. When I talk specifically about the decision to retain the existing building itself, that then set in stone a number of different variables, whether it was through the design or where we put and or utilize the existing zoning as of rights, whether it be heights, et cetera. As you saw in the evolution of the site, we had originally looked at putting a building not only where the addition is currently along Springhurst, but also another wing on the east side. It was very obvious that the mature trees, and actually heritage designated mature trees in that area, as well as the need for on-site parkland dedication, was something that was paramount, not only to the community members that were in attendance, but also the city. And so that's why the addition itself went onto the northwest wing, because we wanted to preserve those mature trees. We wanted to be able to provide on-site parkland dedication, and the convent sits where it sits. And as everybody saw in the site history of it, it is a building that evolved over time. So it lended itself well for a retrofit internally to that, but not adding in height on the Oblats front as well. And so on the northwest wing, we are keeping with the zoning as of right permissions that are there, but also leaving the convent along the Oblats frontage in preserving its form and its legacy on that front as well. So with all of those variables, those are how we arrived at the design and the massing and where we are now with all of those features that are being presented and proposed.
Thank you for that, Dana. I just wanted to double check on the response. Yes, okay, so you went through the design of the addition and the green space. I'm sure there'll be other questions about that. One of the things we had sent you, and then we'll move on to other questions, was around the number of 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, you know, more than just the bachelors. And so, because, you know, I think there's an opportunity here to have more of those kind of larger bedrooms, family kind of oriented ones, or, you know, multiple people living in them instead of bachelors. Was there a reply to that one, or one that you would want to update us on in terms of unit count and the 2 bedrooms versus 3 bedrooms versus bachelors?
For sure. Dana, if you want to go first, or I can, it's up to you.
Yeah, you go ahead, Ryan, and then I can supplement if you'd like, if needed.
Great, thanks. So in terms of why studio apartments, currently based on our studies, studio apartments account for approximately 12% of rentable units within the Greystone Village area. We are building accommodations that are more attainable to those that are new to their careers. You know, it can be attainable to a variety of people at a variety of stages of life, but that market is only 12%. So if we look at the 1-bedroom apartment, let's say, or above, as the total cost of living, entry into living in this neighborhood, it's fairly high once you factor in everything. What we're doing is intentionally building studio apartments. What it does is it brings in more diversity, and it is fulfilling an undermet need within the community. You know, not everyone has the budget for a 1-bedroom apartment, but studio apartments are much more attainable. And currently, according to our calculations, they only are about 12% of rentable units within the neighborhood. And this is just based on rentable stock. If we were to include essentially all of the residential in the neighborhood, it would be much, much lower.
Okay, I appreciate the response. I do think it needs another look, and that we need to look at a bit of a different mix than what's currently presented. So I will keep working with you on that. Okay, we're gonna go to questions. I've got KH first, and we're gonna try to just, if people can kind of keep their questions, you know, couple of minutes, and then we can get through everybody tonight. So KH, go ahead. And you're on mute at the moment. Not sure if we have to try to unmute you somehow, some way. What I'm going to do is try to go to Marlene again. Marlene is up next. Marlene, you've already spoken, but so maybe I'll go to Georgia first. Yeah, Georgia, why don't we go with you first, and then Marlene will come back to you, okay? Just
sure, thank you. Just picking up on what Ryan from Smart Living said, what you're noticing around the rest of the world, I actually noticed something very different when I just traveled through German villages. I was on a river cruise, German villages, Vienna, larger German cities. I didn't see one historical building in any of those cities over 15 days. One historical building, one monastery, one parliament building that had modern apartments attached to them, which personally I feel completely takes away from the historical value and the beauty of the original structure and why that structure was placed on that property to begin with. I think that we originally, many of us in this community thought we were happy when we were told that the convent would be kept. However, I think many of us believed that would only be the convent that would be retrofitted into lots of apartments. It's a very big building. It could contain a lot of apartments, and we can maintain the beauty of this property. I'm not hearing a lot about the city of Ottawa. We live in a beautiful city. There are a couple of examples. Smart Living Property has one on Mann Street. I think it's called Aspire, that has built modern apartments around the church itself. I don't personally find that very attractive at all. I think it loses the history. As well, there's the new one on, is it St. Charles Market. Same idea. From what I can see is that this is very peculiar to Ottawa, and I don't quite understand it. It kind of gets back to what I believe Don has said. What will we think of this in 15, 50 years? What will this look like for our city? Thank you.
Dana or Simon or Lisa?
I'm not going to, like, as the position of the city, as we said, we've been talking with the city, and we will work through the city. Part of the process with the city is a design review. Urban Design does comment on the proposal. We haven't received formal comments from them yet. So the integration of the new addition with the Oblats building, there will be comments on that, and you're welcome to produce some of those as well. And I think there's the comments on materiality and certain elements of what's being proposed. Nothing is set in stone right now. So those are going to be welcomed comments. And just to highlight, this building does have, as I said, 44 units that are a 2-bedroom or more. And so there is a mixture. It may not be the percentage. And I think that's something that Councillor Menard is speaking to, that there might be some flexibility there. And I think that leads to a pretty good point that sort of I was going to touch upon with regards to parking. As the number of units change, let's say they went to all 3-bedroom units, the building itself could be the same shape, requiring a number less parking spaces. So there is a relationship there between number of units and parking spaces or amenity space. So the shape of the building may not change with less units being provided, because the unit sizes could be changed, if that makes sense.
Thank you for that, and thank you for the comments around the UDRP as well, and the staff comments that'll come back that have not yet. That is appreciated, and Georgia, appreciate your comments. Okay, Marlene, why don't we go back to you again, and we'll go through the list.
I'll keep it pretty quick here. I just wanted, Ryan, I want to compliment you on your aspiration to be like Denmark. I actually lived in Denmark and worked at the UN for 4 years there, and I can tell you we're not Denmark. Okay, the infrastructure in Denmark is dramatically different, and we will take decades and decades to ever get there. For one thing, the reason so many people drive cars is they have 180% tax on vehicles. So the vast majority of people cannot afford a car. It's not a choice. It's your only option to get to work and back. The weather in Denmark's dramatically different as well. And those factors, of course, lead to a culture in which cycling becomes a means of survival for a lot of Danes, and not really. I mean, yes, for a lot of them, it is a choice, but it's not like, oh, everybody just wants this. So I would just like us to keep that in mind. We can't really compare Canada, Vancouver perhaps, but not Ottawa, to Denmark. And I know that full well because I've lived there for 4 years. I just wanted to come back to a comment made about the parquet. When I talked about the trees related to the parquet, I mean, I've sent several of the people on this call a design that was created between the sisters and Domicile. And it's not just about the statue, guys. I know you're going to move the statue, and that's what Adriana was getting at as well. It's not just the statue for the sisters. It's the symbolism that the whole park played. The design of the trees that were put intentionally where they are around the statue. And I've sent that design to all of you. And I know there's nothing explicitly in writing between, I guess, in domicile and your folks to keep that design, but that design was definitely a part of the marketing tool that was presented to TCOM owners who were purchasing this building. And so I just think that we should keep that in mind. And if on one hand, we're going to say that we don't need to adhere to sort of false promises from a developer on the parquet, then we also don't need to adhere to any false promises that the builder may or may not have given the Old Ottawa East Community Association. And I've been copied on those emails to the Community Association. And I know that the builder did not explicitly in any way, shape, or form, and they make it really explicit that they didn't make any promise to put a parquet there or a walkway there. So let's keep that in mind when we, I'm not trying to create opposition, but I'm just trying to be fair here in the sense that we can't say on one side, we don't have to adhere to this, but we should adhere to this. Like, let's just be realistic. And then I just, I understand the intention to keep the facade of the building, but there's a whole design school about, facadism, and you guys are architects or design people in here. And it is well done around the world to be able to add additions onto original facades and keep the heritage value of those facades as well. That's been done around the world in all these places that we continue to say we admire. So in terms of blending old and new. So there is options not to offload density and still respect the facade of the building. So I'd just like us to keep that in mind too. I just think we've got to be a bit more open-minded in what we're looking at here.
Thank you very much for those comments, Marlene. We're going to record those and make sure that staff will see them as well. I appreciate that. I see KH is back on, and let's see if you can unmute now, because I know you were up first and you probably had to leave, and there we are, right on.
Wow, you are very kind to my technical issues here. So thanks. I may have missed similar questions, so please just let me know if it's been answered already. Two issues. One, in terms of your 11 units that are barrier-free, what does that mean? And then the second, in terms of providing shared transportation, active transportation options, etc. I live in a condo on Greystone Village site, and I can tell you right now, the shared transportation options are woefully inadequate for a person like me who's trying to embrace active transportation and shared transportation options to avoid getting a car. So I know that's not for the developer specifically, but Sean and OOCA, you're very aware that the community, if we talk about offloading concerns, the density is significant and only going to get more so with further developments happening. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for that. Did you want to go into the accessible units first? And maybe I can just speak to briefly on the walking and biking and transit options in the area.
The accessible units mean that, like, the barrier-free means that the units are accessible. So they are designed in such a way where anybody that has any type of barrier, whether that be a wheelchair, cane, stroller, etc., has all the turning radiuses, the corridor sizes, bedrooms, etc., the heights of sinks is all accessible. And so barrier-free means accessible in nature. And so we provided those units within the building and in the design of the building. And then I'm not sure if I understood the question just around the active transportation. One of the considerations in the surface parking lot is to provide a car share. And because that's at a surface parking level, it's not just for the use of the tenants within this building, but it is also a public use that can be utilized as well.
And that's great. Now we've asked for, I think, a couple of car share spots, and would appreciate working together on that, because I think the whole community could use that, certainly in this area. This area has been redeveloped. Main Street was completely redeveloped, right? And it took some car space away and added bike lanes and better walkability, connecting up with the north side of Main, which is also about to be redone, as well as Greenfield and Hawthorne. And so there is some connectivity here that needs to be, finished in the next several years. But certainly this is one of the most bikeable, walkable neighborhoods there is in Ottawa. And I think, the comment is well taken in that you still want more 15-minute communities. That is developing here with the business on the bottom, fronting on Main Street, the designations that we have, the new official plan. And so that's really, coming here in terms of more grocery options and, shopping, school options, those sorts of things with the redevelopment of Deschâtelet community hub, affordable housing, and the community center, as well as the school. I think there is a lot of, really positive space here that is accessible through active transportation. And that is something we're definitely trying to encourage in the core. It is something that, we need to do for a whole lot of reasons in the city. It obviously costs less money overall. It saves the city money, and it is much better in terms of climate change and health of our city. So certainly there's still challenges ahead, and the city has been, I think, woefully inadequate in other areas, and continues to be in terms of expanding that network versus, say, roads and widening roads versus active transportation. But we work on that, and at least you have a friendly councilor here in those things in terms of your own area, and we continue to try to push those objectives. So, definitely appreciate the comments. Okay, I think. Did you want to? Sorry. Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. I'm glad you got the mute button sorted out. Paul Goodkey, I've got you next on the list.
Here we go. Sorry, I'm just drinking something right now. I have a few comments. I did attend the pre-consultation. I did say at that time that this proposal, or that proposal back at that time, was too dense. I still think it's too dense. The architect at that pre-consultation said, we recommend that you take a look at a more of an H shape to the development. And I reiterated that I thought that was a good idea. If there was an H shape, we wouldn't have the blank wall on the west side. You might have some sort of compromise between whether the statue and the park stay in that location or relocated over to the east. I think you could have open space at both locations. So I'd like to know what happened with that thought of an H shape. I agree with Sean. The unit types, I think we need more family units. Back to the density, I mean, the whole of this Sisters and Oblats property is supposed to be 1,000 units. That's the target. That's the target in the new Old Ottawa East secondary. That's the target. We're getting closer to 2,000. It causes all kinds of problems if you're too dense. And so, I mean, I brought that up back then. I still feel the same way. And not to say that I don't think what you've provided is better. I mean, it's definitely better, but it could be a heck of a lot better. I don't like the fact that there's no articulation to the building along Springhurst. What else have I done? I guess that's pretty much it. I just wanted to bring up one thing, and Sean, you might look into this. And I mean, it's the Old Ottawa CDP talks about connectivity, and it's really important to have that connectivity go through from Oblate over to Springhurst. And the only place to put it, if the building stays, is to the west. So that's between the Sisters and Teton. So within the agreement, that the site plan control agreement for the TCOM building says, is one of the conditions, that the thing's about 30 or 40 pages long. The applicant, Domicile Homes, has committed to providing a public pathway either at this location in the future if the Sisters of Sacred Heart vacate the property, or further east on the property if the convent is demolished in the future, and that location is more appropriate. So all this talk, I mean, it is something that the Old Ottawa East Community Association expected. I think it's definitely something that's meaningful. That's about it. Thanks.
Thank you, Paul. Very good comments. And I think that, the articulation on Springhurst and the kind of H design piece, I'm sure city staff and others, within design review panel will also raise these items. So I think that the team likely aware of these things, and those are good comments to have here recorded. Appreciate you weighing in on this. Richard Dedman, you're up. Nice to see you here.
Thanks, Sean. So just to give people some context, I've lived in Old Ottawa East for 30 years. I live in a house directly to the east of the convent. So I'm at the other end from a lot of the speakers today. And I'll be interested in working on how things build on our end. Quite frankly, it's even a little complex because technically I own 4 inches of part of the convent. The property line goes right into the wall of the convent at one point. So I'll have some questions about access.
Richard, you sound a little bit like you're too close to the speaker or something.
Oh, is that better, Sean?
Try going even further away.
Even further away? Okay. Sorry about that. Let me drop my mic down a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that any better?
Oh, yeah. That's great. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry about that. And so since we've been here, we've had building on, this will be the last side of our house. We had the townhouses that Domicile built to the east of us, then we had the Greystone south of us, and now we're having the convent to the west of us. And the one thing that I do care about, as people might remember, are trees. So I am glad that they're going to keep those large trees. They are, significant trees, and I think they really add to that part of the neighborhood. I echo some concerns around the mix of units, 230 bachelors, and then the rest are handfuls of 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms. So it concerns me a little. I wonder, I like attainable. I find that a lot of the building that has happened in the last 10 years has been very much on the upper end. And as I've lived here 30 years, my kids are all in their 20s now, and they're going, how are we ever going to live in a neighborhood like Old Ottawa East? So I like attainable. I'm not exactly sure what attainable means, but I do like that concept. But I'm a little concerned about the mix of things and what that means for turnover. Like if 230 units are bachelors, is this going to have a lot of turnover that's going to lead to less of a community feeling, right? So that's I think probably the biggest concern I have.
Good, great comments. Thank you, Richard. And just, you're right next door, you're right nearby here, and you've had a long history in the community, and certainly remember all the issues with the trees and all the work that you did to protect trees in that neighborhood, and I know we'll continue to do. So thank you for those very good comments. Appreciate you. Cam, up next with comments. We're not hearing anything, Cam. If you are speaking, I see you've unmuted. Try again. No, we're still not hearing anything at the moment. So we'll just maybe log out, log back in, but we see you've unmuted, but we cannot hear your voice. So maybe it's a plug-in speaker issue or headphone issue or something. Jacques, we'll go to you.
Okay, good evening, everyone. So my name is Jacques Taillefer, and I'm going to start by giving you the punchline, and then I'll try and go backwards from there. So remember, I mentioned I will be mentioning shuttle service. Why? Just very quickly, Dana, Lisa, Ryan, I'm always impressed how developers and builders and designers walk through these processes with us and are somehow in the middle of addressing some issues that have far more to do with the zoning and planning and secondary plans and bylaws. But I just wanted to give you a little shout out there. Now, I'm confused. So I'm new to Old Ottawa East, but I have lived in Ottawa and I came to this community. And so I was reading about it before I came to this part of the city, this ward. Very specifically at the time for this project at 15 Oblats, I was under the impression, like some other speakers, that it was maintaining the existing heritage building and repurposing. I remember reading that it was going to be done from a co-living perspective approach with shared amenities, and I'm a big fan of that. So I've been talking up this project from the outside for whatever it's worth for a while. But here's my point. That's really changed now. And I understand that the property also changed hands. And I also understand that, your companies don't run charities. And so you have to make these projects financially viable. So I'm going to get to one very specific point. 230 studio units that are attainable. Two things. What study was done to clearly demonstrate that if you build it, they will come? That's the demographic that is actually going to come in and use these. Because if that's the case, back to my punchline, we got to start thinking outside of the box in cities. And one of the things that I would suggest is then, if in fact you have a study to back this up, and you're going to young professionals, they're going to be working in the urban core with some of the presumptions that have been made, well then, one of the only ways you're going to alleviate the congestion, the parking issue, is by having an eco shuttle, so active transportation, going right to the Lees LRT station site. That can then bring people to the Rideau. You get the idea. Otherwise, I purposely rented in this neighborhood and didn't buy because I've become very preoccupied with the difference between what got published, what got said, and what has become. And I can tell you, as someone new, I'm definitely reconsidering buying in this neighborhood because I see what many people have indicated, that with all the best intentions of the world with Communauto and these rideshare services, there's not enough. People are parking on the streets. Let's not, hide it. So in adding this density, people are going to come with cars unless you have a very specific marketable solution.
Hello.
Do not think for 1 second that people are not going to bring their cars unless you can, because transit in this neighborhood is bad.
We can hear you, Cam. So we'll come to you as soon as Jacques is done. Sorry, Jacques.
Okay, thanks.
So transit in this neighborhood is insufficient as well. Rideshare is insufficient. So all the active modes of transportation that would come as a solution to really pretend you can sell this idea that people aren't going to come with cars. And so that's not you, the developers, the builders. So councillor, and if there's city staff listening, that's where personally as a resident of this community and from what I hear from neighbors and on the street, and look, you cannot sell to people that parking is not going to be an issue unless you bring very specific and creative solutions. And secondly, I have not heard two final points. One, what is the price of entry? Like Richard indicated. So what's attainable? What's the definition? What's a 2-bedroom cost, a 3-bedroom cost, a studio, 1-bedroom? I have not seen that written anywhere. I understand it's market rent. What does that mean exactly? And we need to define that, because otherwise I will definitely join the chorus of people saying, you know, I was a big fan and I'm becoming more and more opposed as every day goes by, because there's some very key pieces that are missing in my opinion. And I'm happy to get in contact with you and speak about it a little bit more, because I don't want to take up more time than I have. But I did not purposely participate prior because I was a big fan. And I'm here tonight because I'm becoming far less of a fan.
Thank you for that. There is a question there. So Dana or Ryan, Lisa, on the cost of units, what is attainable is Jacques' specific question, and then I'll go into a little bit more on shuttle service, that sort of thing.
Great question. Dana, would you be able to provide the starting at price for, or average price for, a studio within the building?
So a couple of things that I want to mention, Jacques. We are still, like, I know that you had mentioned that it had changed hands. It's still proposed as a co-living product. That co-living product has a heightened amount of amenities within the building. There's actually an amenity space for utilization on every single floor, as well as the entire lobby. The other thing in terms of attainable housing, or an attainable unit itself, the unit design, the unit sizes make those units attainable in their nature as well, because of the square footage of each of those units. They're also all inclusive. So all of your furniture, all of your chattels, all of your utilities, and all of your cable, etc., is all included within your base rent. And then from there, the intention is that then you have your space with that you live with your and these, sorry, I'm fumbling over my words. You have your space that you utilize, but then you have access to the amenities that are highly and oversupplied in the building itself, to be an extension of and to create a level of community within that building, also the building itself. If you want some additional information in terms of what the base rents are and what the overall inclusions can be, I can provide that as well. But it's really just a factor of market, and it's a factor of, income, as well as what the overall annual rent is, as well as what's included. And that's how this has been designed. We've also learned throughout COVID that either sharing accommodation and/or different unit sizes is not something that the market is demanding right now. So in terms of the reports that you're talking about in the study and the market study that we've looked at as well, we have those materials to support this demographic. You are right in that. And there was another gentleman that was speaking about, his children at 20, how they were going to be able to afford this attainable product. It's not only attainable in its size and what's provided, but it's also convenience in that transitional housing, where you may not have all of your furniture, you may not have everything that you can bring with you. So it's attainable in that nature as well. It's still a factor of market, but the way that it's been designed and the way that it's been provided with the extension of the community internally is really where that sits.
Okay, thank you. I mean, I think it would be helpful just following up. There is a couple of things. So on the price specifics, it'd be good to get that. And then if you've got a presentation deck, you can share with us after. We can send that to participants, just the one that you had sent out. And so maybe just as a follow-up, Dana, we can send out some information to folks that have attended tonight.
I don't know if Ryan wants to say anything else, but yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, we're definitely happy to, I know there's a lot more questions. We're definitely happy to spend some time to address that in more detail. But as Dana mentioned, by building smaller spaces, but including a huge amount of amenity space, we look at the property as a total living rather than isolated living within the apartment. And due to the nature of that formula, we're able to provide accommodations that include all the hidden costs of renting. So we calculate total cost of living. that is, based on our studies, lower than what is currently available in the market. So we've essentially provided quality housing at a higher volume that's more attainable than what currently the neighborhood offers. I think Dana summed it up otherwise, and we're happy to chat on that more in more detail.
Okay, no, that's great. Thank you.
I apologize, but just quick supplemental to that. Yes, big fan of the concept, correct. But I think till we get real numbers, we're gonna have to, the definition of attainable once again, and everything you said is absolutely why I'm a fan of the concept, and I have been for a long time. But we're gonna have to start putting a number and reality to that, because we all know what's happening with inflation. We all know young people coming into the job market. And we all know that although we might consider that attainable, wages are not keeping up. So before you go ahead and start proposing things to the city, I think you would do well, from what I hear from the young people, and I actually work with young people as well, to really clarify. I mean, if you're really bringing in 230 studio units and you don't have an active transportation model that people can actually hang their hat on, and I know that's not a you problem, but because we're all grouped here together, I want to bring that in. You're not going to be able to sell this concept, and so therefore I'm going to join the people that are basically saying, well, this is just going to mean a lot more on-street parking in a place where there already isn't enough. And so of course people are going to object, especially given the fact that the target was 1,000 in density and we're approaching 2,000. So somewhere in this great plan where you're planning to build, there's some serious pieces missing here.
Okay, thank you. And I think the follow-up will be important. And in terms of this, the comment around shuttle service, I mean, the bus service is what's important here, and getting to and from those LRT stations as well as into the core. And that's always something that we're looking to, improve as this entire, transit system we think needs an overhaul, and the way it's been throughout the pandemic. But there's a lot more to do there, and certainly the services it goes into the Greystone development now, which is a lot more than normal developments receive, and so we're very thankful for that. And there is obviously bus service to and from this, with capacity on Main Street into the core and into the suburbs. So that connects up with LRT. So certainly well taken point, and important to improve that service, as we develop this area. Folks, I'm worried about time. So it's 8:43 now. I said we wanted to go to 8:45. So we're obviously going to go a little bit over that. But if you can just please keep your comments succinct, just recognizing there's others who want to speak here. And if you've already spoken once or twice, then I just ask if you can just send us an email follow up, because I think we want to try to get everyone a chance to speak. So Patricia, you're up.
Thanks so much.
Sean.
Oh, I'm sorry, Cam, you're up actually. Sorry, Patricia, we'll come right back to you. My apologies. Cam, you are up.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. I mean, for everybody to understand why I'm raising my hand, like Richard, I am very concerned about this, because I also live exactly behind the building on Parish Private, just facing the building on the east side. So we heard a lot of comments on the other side, facing domicile, pushing for privacy on that side, but we didn't hear much on our side, myself and Richard. But first of all, let me be positive and thank everybody for sharing the plans of modifying the building. And it was interesting to see how it evolved. And I'm happy to see that they didn't go with the idea of adding floors on Oblats. Simply, it would have bastardized the structure as a heritage. Because when you go to the street, I hope that they will beautify the facade to put even more, like re-enhance the vitrage and to show the building. You think that it's not a building of apartment, but it's still a convent, and modernize from the facade. That is a very good point. So that you didn't add anything on Oblats Street. So the thing that I want to bring here is what are you going to do on the side, my side and Richard's side, because we are residences and we are very close to the building. I didn't hear much the same way as domicile. What are you going to do about privacy? I mean, this is few feet away from houses, not a building, not a condo. So what are you going to do? There would be noise pollution with so many windows. We were told that if the building was going to be redesigned, there would be an easement to move further away from the parish. Now we have a very tiny lane. That's a private lane. And we have properties that are residencies with families. And we'll have like these, how many, 50 windows overlooking our properties. And there will be noise pollution, there will be light pollution, and there's also a structure that is a staircase, that is an emergency exit. Is that going to be staying there? So what are you going to do on that side? I'd like to hear more on this aspect. That was my main concern. And the density, of course, Sean knows about the issues about parking in the area. Of course, we have bus transit, but it's not a metro. Like, I mean, this is not a metro line that we have in the neighborhood to accept a very high density. So we have to be aware of that. I know that there's an LRT, but it's far away. And the bus system is not really a metro. So very high density probably wouldn't work that much, but that was my main question.
Appreciate that. And yes, definitely we need better, quicker service directly to that LRT along Main Street as we grow. So that is a goal of ours, and I appreciate that point. Now, Dana, on the other points and others, did you want to jump in just on Cam's points quickly, and then we'll keep moving through.
Sure. So the existing building is obviously staying where it is, and it's being retrofitted on the inside. The interior will have 4 floors, and so the east wall will have some units of 4 floors. Realistically, the way that it's shaped, you're looking at 8 units in total on that east wall. And then in terms of the front of Oblats, there'd be additional landscaping. And then on the back, those mature trees have been preserved, and a parkland dedication and a public park will be provided on the northern portion along Springhurst.
And maybe a quick comment on the parking and on-street parking. I think we touched on it earlier in terms of
I think what my question was about, like the very close proximity. What would there be something that would be done in terms of those windows that there is no, in terms of lighting, in terms of noise, because they're very close to properties? I mean, a convent is something, but high density, building like that is different, right?
So the sisters, at the time, did live in the building, but it is being retrofitted with some formal floors as well as units themselves. I might turn to Lisa, but the building itself is remaining in situ as we are renovating and retrofitting that building. And so there isn't any increased setbacks that we can provide. But we haven't added any additional infill on either Oblats or Springfield on the on the east side. And then, sorry, Ryan, you wanted to address the parking.
Yeah, we talked earlier about kind of city planning, the intentional design of the property. A couple quick comments to add to it is intentional management. So we manage more than 80 properties in the downtown core with different variations of this type of strategy and living. We have an intentional management program that residents renting in the building are very aware about parking restrictions. They're very aware on our policy of promoting active transportation and discouraging car use. And we definitely invest a lot of time into educating on how we can integrate our residents into the community and educating our residents on street parking and what's permitted and what isn't, and essentially discouraging this. We talked earlier about big city planning, referenced some other cities. Those results in those other cities were intentional by design. And then with that intentional design came to fruition years later. And so through our management, just to give everybody a little bit of peace of mind, is that we're intentionally designing how we manage this property with these concerns in mind. And we've been very successful at it with a high volume of properties in downtown Ottawa.
I think what Ryan brings up too is a very important point, that this is a professionally managed, operated rental property. And so there will be 24-hour property management, also being aware of everything that's going on at the site at all times.
Okay, thank you both for that. Patricia Burnett, you're up.
Thanks, Councillor. Hi, everybody. I just was hoping for some clarification on the rental structure that you're anticipating. So are these intended to be yearly or monthly rentals, or are you actually going to anticipate something like weekly or daily, like an Airbnb kind of a model?
No, these are, thank you for your question. These are annual tenure. These are annual leases.
Thank
you.
12
months. Yeah.
Thank you, succinct and appreciated. Scott Russo, you're up.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Sean. And I think thanks everyone, including the presenters, for just telling us more about the building and giving your concerns. And I think nobody's heard from people on Springhurst yet. So I'm on the other side of the building from all the other people. And we're right in front of where the proposed addition is going to be. And obviously, that addition has garnered the most vociferous kind of feedback today. And it's something I'm hoping you're going to look at. From our side of things, putting that up cuts out our winter sun. So it does affect the neighbors. And I'd like to see maybe you guys look at something. If you're still going to do that after all of this, some terracing away from the street and away from the building might be something you could think about. Just an idea to lessen the impact, because that's obviously today, that's really your biggest, I would say, negative comments you've got is the impact that has on the community around you. So that's just, I don't want to talk anymore, we're late, but thanks for letting me speak.
Oh, and I appreciate you reiterating that point. I think that's absolutely fair. So thank you, Scott, for that good point. Michael Dawson, you're up.
Thank you, Sean, and thank you. I'd like to, just maybe for context, I am a neighbor that's on Rosemere Avenue, so just sort of around the corner from the proposed development. We've lived in the area for 16 years now. So I think I won't take a lot of time, but there are a lot of positives with this proposal, and I do want to make sure that the developer understands that, right? Because I've seen lots of developments in the community over the years, and I'm really pleased to see that the building is being retained as opposed to demolished, and the developer not exceeding what's permitted by zoning, because we've seen that so many times where people here have been talking about, well, you could do a 6-story or 4-story. We've seen many places where they go well beyond that. So I'm very happy to see that. I think one of the things in terms of the areas that I haven't really heard talked about is with the increased density in the area, there's been some talk about, around the active transport and bus transportation. I think it was mentioned that the bike parking or the bike will be off of the Springhurst area. So one of the things I'd like, and this is maybe less for the developer, maybe more for Sean and the city, is given that the direction or the active transport lanes are on Main Street, is there any consideration for putting a contraflow lane on Springhurst to bring up to Main Street? The other maybe question for the developer is there any proposed bike parking for visitors, or is it only for residents? So that's another consideration. The other factor is in terms of integrating this development into the community and offering amenities to those people. Has there been any consideration for community gardens? Has there been any consideration with respect to the total number of new developments that have happened in the area and the loss of the green space, and especially for off-leash dog park? Is there any, again, this is probably less for the developer, more for Sean, but given the increase in density, we have lost a lot of the, really a lot of the green space. And there's been a significant increase in the number of new residents that have dogs, and not really a lot of place for off-leash dog area. I think the other last question I have is I've heard a lot of questions and discussion around attainable, but nothing around affordable. So I don't know if there's been any consideration with any percentage of this development being designated as affordable housing.
Okay, I'll take just a couple of those and then pass it over on the affordable housing side and the other point you were making to Dana. So on the Contrafull Lane on Springhurst, it's a good idea. Just one-way street there. And so that often works on those one-ways where there is room. And I think it happens anyway a lot here. So just formalizing it makes a lot of sense. So certainly that's something we will look at. So I've made a note with Ariella, and we can look at that in the future. Appreciate you raising that, Michael, and always appreciate your help with city issues. You've been great on a lot of these things. Off-leash dog areas, certainly understand that point. I mean, the biggest one in this community was Brantwood and the discussion there, and we held a whole consultation and tried to work through the pathway, how the pathway worked, the off-leash on at certain times for the baseball diamond when not in use. And so we've gone to consultation. Dog politics are always very contentious, but in this case, that Brantwood was certainly a spot where we did consult. We came in 3 years ago and did a full big consultation on that. And the resolution was some minor change, but not the full off leashes I think you're looking for. And of course, there's Springhurst there that we cannot allow a road to go through because we'll lose even more green space if that is the case in the future. And obviously a lot of folks with dogs and sports and other options there. So your point is well taken, and something we continue to work on in terms of locales for dog owners that's off leash. I know I live right near Windsor Park, and it's fantastic for that, right? So it's a short jaunt over for you, but it's more than just bring your backyard, that's for sure. So I know, and then Glebe, there's the kind of fenced in area. They've got the off leash fenced in portion. So I think there's probably more discussion to be had about some of those areas where we might look at, and appreciate the point. It's never easy on those issues, but definitely appreciate where you're coming from, and something we're happy to keep looking into in the future. Dana, did you want to speak to the other points on affordable housing? And the other one, I'm just trying to remember what it was, but
yeah, sure. There's three. There's one about visitor bicycle parking, which we are providing. Lisa can remind me exactly how much, but it is zoning required visitor parking that we're providing, both short and long term. So we are providing that on site. The second one, I'm just hoping that because the parkland dedication is a part of the application, when it's dedicated, it will be a city park. And so hopefully, probably not actually off leash, but at least there's an area there, not only for families and members of the public to go, but dogs to at least relieve themselves and possibly meet one another. And so hopefully that also becomes a park that people utilize often. And then in terms of the affordable housing piece, so obviously affordable housing is extremely important. We're obviously in a housing crisis right now. The attainable housing that we're trying to provide provides a certain amenity, I think, that we already went into in terms of its convenience and a transitionary type of housing. Affordable housing done well has other supportive resources that are provided within it. And so it's not something that's necessarily a part of and or can be facilitated in this product type that we're proposing, but it's something that we will continue to talk to the councillor as we go through this process as well, and how we can support a lot of those efforts.
Just on the visitor parking, I know you were talking about for bicyclists, because all the indoor bicycle parking, I get I get the connection there with having all the bicycle parking indoors. It's not necessarily the most convenient for people on bikes. So part of the landscape plan will have bike racks outside at convenient entrances so people can access via bike as a visitor. And then on the parking for cars, we are maintaining the visitor parking rate. So you still will be able to visit via car and be able to park at the rates that are we might be slightly short a couple spaces, but the intent there is that we're maintaining all the spaces for visitor or Uber Eats or whoever, so it's not inconveniencing those people. We also have a loading space along Oblats that we're working on with the city for those bigger moved items, not furniture, because they don't necessarily need to bring furniture into these, but for the Amazon delivery truck that might be a cube van that needs to be able to access. So there is sort of those accommodation that goes to Ryan's comment about learning from buildings that they've designed already and having that management of the building thought up at the forefront. So you're not trying to find a solution after the building is built. So those are elements that we will look at. And as much as I brought up the point once where I'm like, the units are quite small, you won't necessarily have tons of dogs. Everybody has dogs regardless of the size of your unit.
Absolutely. Okay. Thank you. Michael, are you feeling good about that discussion?
Yeah, no, thank you for that. I do appreciate the clarification with respect to the bike parking and outdoor space for parking, because that is an issue when I go and visit places that have bike parking. It tends to be indoors for the residents only, and there's no place for someone that's visiting. So I think having that as a consideration is important. And just to note, I'm probably one of the outliers that in the community that I'm not really concerned about the parking. And to be honest, if there was zero parking, I would be fine. I think we really, as a city, we need to move away from this focus and this on parking minimums and providing space for vehicles if we really want to achieve our climate goals and objectives. So
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. So we're past 9 o'clock now. I'm not sure if that's Centertown Community Association President Mary Wong or somebody else, but Mary?
Yeah, sorry. My apologies. It is Mary.
Okay, hi.
Hi. Okay. I find it was a little bit lack of clarity. They were trying not to state how much they're trying to rent the units for. But if people look at NB Ottawa, which is a student housing on Champaign Avenue, the studios are about $1,750 to $1,850. And shared accommodation, essentially, when you co-living, the way they're describing it, people have their own private bedroom and with bathroom, and then they share living space and kitchen. Either I missed the very beginning, so using MV, they have 2 to 4 people in a unit. A two bedroom is less than 500 square feet. And so on, and they're usually charging about $1,200 to $1,300 for what's essentially a bedroom, bathroom, and shared kitchen and living area. So this is actually talking about going like $2,400 to $2,600 for a 2-bedroom, or up to more than $4,000 for a 4-bedroom unit. So this is, they're trying to say it's attainable housing, but this is actually very expensive housing.
Okay, well, I have a commitment to Noah and Mary. I think that's an important point. So, and I want to make sure we do, we've asked for those figures. I know Dana and Ryan are going to follow up so that we've got the figures that they're, proposing. Because I agree it's being marketed as attainable housing, and having a room furnished is different than bringing your own things in there. But we're talking about this as being that co-living model, and we want to make sure it works well here. And so that cost point is going to be really important. And of course, we have a lack of affordable housing in Ottawa, so that point we've also raised in a letter to the developer on this. So Mary, I'll just say thank you for that and reiterate to development group that we definitely want to see that as a follow-up. Marlene, we're over time and you've spoken a couple times. Is it urgent to say something again, or?
No, I was just going to say, I mean, it could help them out. I can see on their Spire website that the prices are ranging from 1,400 to 1,800 for a studio. So that gives you a price range, guys.
Yeah, that's accurate. And Mary was accurate as well. The NV building is specifically targeted towards the student demographic, which does drive a premium in rents. We are not targeting student demographic for this building. We'd like a more mature clientele within the property. And Marlene, that is a fair range for a studio apartment that you stated, keeping in mind that it includes all the costs of living, hydro, internet, any other utilities, furniture, etc., which is less expensive than what currently exists in the market today in Greystone.
Okay, thank you for that, and we'll follow up on those points. I do expect more changes to come with this. It's no formal application in yet either, so I expect to see some more changes. I think there's been good comments about a kind of H building and the articulation along Springhurst, the number of units, the combined units, how the parking will work and function in the area, and of course bus and shuttle service and active transportation in the area, which obviously overlaps with our office. So cost of unit is going to be critical here, and just really appreciate everybody's comments. Cost of unit is not something I regulate or the city regulates. It is definitely affordable housing is what we push for, but in terms of the planning committee application, that is about built form and the zoning and that sort of thing, site plan. That's what we're usually able to comment on, but of course these metrics have an effect on all of those things. So, really good discussion, and appreciate everybody from TCOM, from the larger area, and Old Ottawa East Community Association being part of this today. You've articulated some fantastic things, and I know John Dance and Phyllis, as well as others from Old Ottawa East Community Planning Committee, who participated in the initial meeting on this development, and Bob Gordon, president of the Community Association, also field a lot of questions on this project, and really thank you all for your volunteer work. And then Dana from Forward Equity, you've been our main point of contact on the development side, and really great to work with. So appreciate all your efforts, and just want to thank all the residents in the area, Corners on Main and others, for the thoughtful, detailed feedback, as well as residents who have written in on this project. So there's more to come on this, and I think this is a good session where we can keep moving ahead and getting, I guess, incremental changes to keep this positive. So thanks everybody for being here tonight, and more to come on this. Okay, have a good night.